Sally, why don't you start and just give us a short why you want to continue or remain a city councilor?
I love this city. I love living in this city. I think it's a great city. There's a lot of great work to be done still in making it even better. And Ben's going through, in this economic upturn, Ben's going through a whole nother series of changes associated with growth and a little bit with culture too. We just passed the urban growth boundary, and now we have a lot of work to do in terms of implementing it. I love this work. It's really interesting. It's really hard. I love working with people, really diverse people from diverse corners of the city. My work background really comes from working with, my work background allowed me to work with people throughout this community. And I believe that my voice has contributed to many conversations and bringing people together throughout the city, and I'd like to continue, and there's a lot more to be done.
Okay. Wait, why jump in?
I'm running because I grew up here, and I see a lot of the changes that have been happening. A lot of them have been really good, but I see a lot of, I don't know, I want to call it inefficiencies. And coming from the timber industry and being an ISA certified arborist, a tree doctor, I'm dealing with trees and growth all the time. So I find myself as a real problem solver at that. And I've seen things that are so environmentally unsound that they're just backwards. And so being what I call myself an extreme moderate, I love the trees. I think we could just do a better job at the efficiencies in Bend. One of them being like Reed Market Road. That looks nothing like Bend, Oregon. I'd like to blend the trouble that we're having right now with the development. I'd like to see more transect development over on the east side of Bend. I'd like to see better transition from rural to urban, like what Bend used to be. You know, I literally would walk down to the Delaware Market and the Congress Market where I bought my first piece of candy. I would like to see that kind of love on the east side of Bend and the south side of Bend. And last but not least, all the times that I've been going down to city council and putting in my 2 cents worth, I think I'm that kind of person that really stands out with different ideas that you would implement on the ground that would be different from the rest of city council. And I think that the council needs that diversity on there and somebody with the passion that I have on the board.
So that brings me to a question. We're talking, both of you mentioned change and a lot of people talking about a changing city. So what would you say, Sally, to people who say we need a change on the city council?
You know, I'm always an advocate for diverse voices, and I think there are 2 pieces to that. I think with only 7 people on city council, you need people who sit on city council who can hear and listen to and engage diverse voices. So it's about having different viewpoints on council, and there's some validity to that, but I think the other piece is to really have people in place who can listen and engage with diverse voices throughout the community. I think it's also really important to have somebody with a really strong business background and a really strong background in this city, and both of us have that type of background, I will say. But you've got you will have much stronger leaders if you have people with broader backgrounds and broader skill sets. It's very complicated, it's very technical, and it's very exciting and interesting.
Wade, why are you a different voice? You said, different voice, different council.
Because my skills and background in business is very solid, I'm always at a loss for words, but very solid, very consistent. I'm not one of these people that's here today, gone tomorrow. My family has a huge history in it, and more importantly, I take a pride in that history, and I take a pride in my business being in the same business. Literally, you could say for 30 years if you counted the logging side of it. And when the logging went down, I didn't go on the dole, about retraining for this or retraining. I took my same skills, added to it, became a tree doctor, a certified arborist, and then started down the road of the tree service business, which is one of the most successful ones in town with the highest integrity. you know, I am always fighting to save trees. I've loved trees when I was logging. That's what people don't understand. And I love the trees that we have here in town. And then I've taken and expanded on that. And every business I've had, whether it's my DJing business, which you have to be artful and colorful and understanding people, and you're doing somebody's wedding when it's the most intense time of their life. I've never gone bankrupt. I've never, so that's the part of me that I take very, very seriously.
Let me ask this question, Wade. You've grown up here, you've lived here your whole life. Is the city going to grow up or out, in your opinion? Which way?
I'm hoping that if I can work with the state representatives, learn this city council politics, and learn this politics, I would like to see it grow out. There's some places where we're going to grow up, like in transect development. I would like to see, you know, Newport, Reed Market should be more like Newport, 27th should be more like 14th Street. So we're going to grow out, we're going to urbanize a little bit, but it's going to be so specific how we urbanize. I don't want to see, here's a good example, Troy Field. Okay, 2030 wants urbanization, but do you want urbanization on Troy Field? No. I would do some urbanization, maybe between the railroad tracks and 3rd Street like they're talking. That would be pretty cool. That could be our core. But I want to transect, I want to transition out from there that the people that need to be on those jobs, like the breweries and things like that, they can afford to live above the brewery or just behind the brewery, you know, in an apartment setting. And let's put more, I live on the east side. Moved over there specifically because I was having a 3rd child back in 1994, and it was literally, as a native, all I could afford at that time with logging going down the hill. The coolest thing over there is Jackson's, I call it Jackson's other corner. Why don't we have more of that on the west side? Like the Worthy Brewing. Why don't we make the west bend, the bungalow bend, the south bend and the east bend and the north bend, and then maybe down in the center of town we can get some high buildings down there where we're not going to affect the tree environment too much.
Sally, what do you see on that?
Well, certainly through the work on the urban growth boundary, we need to grow up as well as and a little bit of out. I think the really cool vision that I've explored is we do a little bit of everything. We have efficiency areas designated in the urban growth boundary work, so we take some of those old areas down along 3rd Street, and we also look at the areas around the OSU Cascades campus and south of Bend and create sort of small inner communities and neighborhood centers throughout the city. That's a really important element of this work. I'm really interested in seeing it implemented. I think growing up on some of this underutilized land along 3rd Street is a great idea. It doesn't block anyone's views. It brings services and people living together, hopefully in a little more affordable housing. I mean, that's part of the goal, is to have people who can really live and work in Bend. That's hugely important to our community. I have some additional thoughts on that. And I look at these huge areas down in Southeast Bend that have yet to be developed that are inside the urban growth boundary still. And those are some great opportunities for us to do a little more density, go a little up, and really utilize the land as community centers. One of the great things I think about this urban growth boundary plan that we put together is also adding strategic lands where we can strategically add services that we couldn't accommodate inside the urban growth boundary, and specifically we brought in lands that address the affordable housing, and with the underlying zoning on all those properties, as they agreed to come in and provide a certain level of affordable housing, that will come with them.
So being longtime Bend residents, there's this, they coined the term better before you came, and as long as I've lived here, and it's been a while as well, you know, to me it's always been better before you came. There's always been bragging rights on when you moved here and whether you're a native or not, and certainly native trumps, but for whatever reason, there's a lot of it now, and part of that is because there's been the increase in development again, but I'd like to put it, I'll start with you, Wade.
Okay.
Do you feel like it's acute now, like there's a greater sense of, hey, let's let's shut the door, or let's make these people be like a local, or some of the stuff that you've seen in the past, or is this just
No,
part of the
it's
course?
not more acute now. I would say it's more accepting now, really. I mean, in 1978, just to give you an example, I said the same thing at the Bend Chamber. When my wife moved here, she's from Sacramento, California, and they had above the train trestle, Californians go home. Well, Bend was a bunch of redneck loggers, the cattlemen and redneck loggers. And me coming from, really a lot of my childhood spent at the University of Kansas. I had long hair, bell-bottom jeans, and I didn't fit in. I didn't even fit in with my cousins. So I got a real effect of that. Now, I see other natives that say, well, I'm a Bend native and they should respect me, And it's like, no, they should respect you for who you are and your thoughts and not the color of your skin, not how long you've been there. So is it any more acute now? I don't think it's any more acute now, but I think there's a transition happening with people like my kids' age that are realizing, you know what? This tourism industry, we got to think about it for a second. Does it really mesh well with living here? Because I can't even afford a house. And, I do brag about to my kids. I bought my first house when I was 19, working at a box boy at Safeway. And I still own the house at 1648 Aubrey. Bought it for $27,000. That's opportunity. That's what we kind of need to get back to. But to do that, we're going to have to realize that we can't be promoting this town. And that's like, so at the Bend Chamber this morning, I hate to carry on a little bit, but my key here is I would like the city run like the way I run my business. I don't have the best painted trucks and I don't do the best marketing, but what I do is I accommodate my customer. And if the city and the beer stoops and the hotels would accommodate their customers and save that money for infrastructure that we're using on promotion, with the internet and everything, we don't have to worry about people coming back. They will be coming back. The problems will be dealing with the growth. So why are we spending money on promotion? I'm not anti-promotion. I'm not for promotion. I'm for accommodating your customer and the people that live here.
Sally, let me get back to, we'll come back to tourism, but.
Oh, you okay, well, I was going to start on
Don't
tourism.
segue into tourism, stay with,
Don't what?
stay
Okay.
with, yeah. Do you think
Yeah.
there's a better before you, more of a better before you came culture now, and if so? what do
I think we all have selective memories, and I also think that some of this passion comes and goes and ebbs and flows with just the economic cycles. You back off and there's not as, and part of what I think fuels it is, I agree that sort of when you drop $20,000 into primarily the West Side any given summer, there's just a lot more people that you're working around. Then you drop a lot of construction into that, just in terms of infrastructure, and then you drop a lot of building into that. And so there's a lot that happens in a really short period of time in Bend every year, and people just start vaporizing at the end of summer. And so what are we really talking about here? From my point of view, I just lost the question. I gotta go back
Well,
to
no,
it.
I think it was, with all those people in here, is there a sense that we're in a place where we need to shut the door? Or, are you seeing that sentiment? Is it real?
And so, thank you very much for the reset. So the sentiment, so from my point of view, if you look at what's happening in people's fuses on a hot summer day when you have all the tourists here and you have all this building going on at once, infrastructure, right, just repairs as well as building, there is this sense that maybe we're going too much too fast. But from my point of view, I think the key is we don't have a choice whether or not we grow or not. And the state really dictates that we grow within an urban growth boundary. So for me, the key is how do we grow and how do we continually to set the framework to create this really cool, awesome town going forward. That's what I'm really interested in. It's about these core values, about being cool, about livability, and dissecting it. Do you want to be able to see the stars at night? Do you want to be able to sleep in the quiet? Do you want to be able to go to a really great restaurant? Do you want to be able to go to free events throughout town in the summertime and enjoy the summertime? Do you want to go to a great concert that's the only one in Oregon? I mean, what do you want? Do you want to be able to paddleboard on the river and swim in the river? You want to skateboard all over town? You know, what is it?
Right.
But what we really need is a kid where when I came here, there weren't a lot of jobs. Most of the kids that graduated from high school went away, and a lot of them you didn't see back, and you didn't see them back for 30 years. I mean, we didn't have enough jobs. You had to work to hold on to your jobs, and a lot of people couldn't live here and stay here. We didn't have a lot of the services. We didn't have a lot of the radio stations. We didn't have Fred Meyers. I mean, we have grown and evolved as a city
So let me
over
segue,
time.
if we can, before we go to the next question. So let me bring it back around to tourism, because tourism
Okay.
is, you know, that we had written in our paper that it was silly to continue to ask the question because the tourists are here.
Yeah.
And so with this tourist economy that's coming in, is it a positive thing? Is it a negative thing? Is it something we're going to work with? How do we tame it?
That's what I'm specifically saying, taking a mindset of doing. When I say I'm not pro and I'm not against, I'm telling business people, run it like I ran my business. Accommodate your customers. I agree, the tourists are always going to be here. So frankly, to keep the livability here, to keep costs down, if we take care of our customers, let me make it more specific. If the hotels and the breweries take care of their customers, rather than spending $4 million on advertising just Bend alone. My sister-in-law sent me a picture of the World Series. It says visitbend.com on the backstop of the World Series. Why are we spending money like that when we're almost getting overcrowded? What I'm saying as a business person, let's just take the calm, quiet mindset that we don't need to be promoting this town, because when you do that, you're not only getting the tourists, you're getting your competitor. You're going to get a corporate hotel coming in that's going to be competing against the local hotels. You're going to get another brewery that comes in here. You're going to get another tourism industry that's going to compete against the tourists that we're already going for. So my whole mindset is, let me make it clear, is if you accommodate your customers, like the Bend Chamber, I was telling them, if you accommodate your customers, the customers come back, the customers tell other customers, and they come back. Where if you spend money out there, those corporate hotels are going to say, hey, I want to come and build here because they're doing millions of dollars of advertising for me.
And you don't want them here.
I don't think we need other people competing with our own businesses, no. Because when you have that competition, that is also what drives down our livability here. That drives up the cost of living, because now we have more vacancies, the motel owners are making less money, so they can't afford to pay their employees. I've always told my employees, I pay you 15 bucks an hour, I pay you, I make 25 bucks an hour. Work $30 an hour worth of work, because then there's a $5 an hour profit that you are available to that's out there on my decision whether to give you or not. But if you say, hey, I'm only working at $25 an hour, you don't even give your boss the opportunity to give you a raise. So that's what I'm trying to say on a bigger scope with the city of Bend. Does that make sense?
It does.
Don't bring in your competitors.
Sally?
Well, there's sort of a structural issue in this conversation, which is in the transient room tax funds, the way the state law is written, a certain percentage of those funds have to go to promotion. So for tourism promotion, that's how it's written in the state law, and it's very technical and detailed. So, and I think there is a little bit of a balancing problem, because I think if I had to choose today, I would probably invest more in expanding the economic base for living wage jobs, and probably try to shift it out of the tourism sector. So we don't really have that choice today in the way the laws are structured, and they're not easily changed in Salem, or probably the city of Bend and the council would have already done that. So for me, the question is, so what happens if you begin, and we're doing this with Visit Bend, first of all, you have a campaign, Visit Like a Local. Then you're saying, no more marketing this summer season, let's go year round. You know, let's invest all those additional monies in sort of off season. Let's partner with culture and the arts. Let's build our capacity for tourists in other parts of the city, other parts of the seasons, other seasons. And what that does is it takes this peak capacity that lands in Bend, and it keeps those jobs year round, and it help support all the services, all the restaurants, and all those businesses that really count on today just making their spike in maybe a 2.5 or 3 month period of time. And again, but I will say also that our tourist jobs and are really the lowest wage jobs, and they're not living wage jobs. And so I think 20% of our workforce right now is actually in that sector. So we do have an issue really of, and right now being sort of stuck in a place where we have to invest those monies, and they're very strict rules,
Right.
how much and where. So how do we do that in a way that really benefits the city most
So
completely?
in brief, let me just ask.
Yes.
Given all, I realize there's some restrictions on this
Okay.
one, but if you could, either one of you, would you shut the money off? Would you stop promoting Ben?
No.
Wade?
Oh, sorry.
Or Sally, you jumped, so
Okay.
go ahead.
You went first.
I would not shut the money off, but I certainly don't think we need to continue to invest at that level. We certainly could invest, I think, more in off-season promotion, and we're doing that, and that would benefit.
Okay, wait,
And with me, it was like back in my original statement, that's where I want to work with the state representatives, because why do we have it?
work or not, if you could wave your wand, would you shut the tourist promotion dollars off?
No, I would do it just like I do with my business. I'd make it variable.
Okay.
So we can decide, hey, we're really busy here. Let's invest in infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's run it like a business. Oh, we're not busy. We're starving. Hey, let the world know about it.
Okay.
Well, we're talking all about this, excess fund in this one side, and then on the other side we have the city budget issues with street maintenance and things like that. So, Sally, what would be one way, if you just had one option, one way to save money in the city budget?
Save money. Well, we're
Well,
always robbing to pay
fund
Peter to
money.
pay Paul.
Right.
So that's always, and I think the city consistently, so the road maintenance funding is sort of the current issue at hand. But the reason we're there, right? We did other projects instead, and we had an economic downturn, and so we weren't able to bring in the money to do work and maintenance that we, probably should have been doing. But again, we have, frankly, I'm going to say, from my point of view, having worked on the budget committee and watched all these different funding and infrastructure issues that come before council, we never have enough as a community and as a city to meet all the demands that the community expects from us. So we are always prioritizing and trying to be creative. So for instance, I'm sure we'll get into climate change, but one of the things that I like about this current resolution is it sets up a system of partnerships. So the city is a convener, but to expand the transit system, for instance, the city was a convener, and it reached out to, probably 10 different entities and brought in 5 different partners that allowed that service to expand. So I'm thinking the city needs to continue to look at more of those types of models, because there's just not, with the core services we provide and the additional expectations outside of that our community clearly has, we need to look at our core functions first, and we just don't have the financial capacity.
And I always say, how did my grandmother ever afford to live in a small town where there was no opportunities and nothing, no economic growth? How could she afford to drive on a street where 12 cars went by in a day with that kind of infrastructure? Now we have more people than ever paying higher taxes. Why is that? And so I'm not going to be a proponent of just every time we need money, the government needs more money, here you go. Because somehow my parents, that was affordable to live that way. So what I'm trying to say is, I'm going to dig down in the budgets that they have right now. Again, in my business, I have older equipment, because I'm very, functional, and it needs to just get the job done at the lowest cost. Plus, I'm recycling older equipment that most people would go out, buy a new piece of equipment, pay the bank, pay out of town to buy the equipment, the equipment maker, where I take an old piece of equipment, does the job just fine, and the money stays local when I use it on a mechanic. Same thing that could happen in the City of Bend. City of Bend buses was a joke. The Reed Market was a joke. We got it on the fuel tax. We got to figure out what's wearing our roads out. There's people out there that thinks it's the big trucks on the road. I went out and did my own personal study. I knew this from the 1980s when the studded snow tires first came out on the front wheel drive cars, what was causing it. But I figured to be more scientific for Jim and those guys, I would show how much the roads have worn, put a straight edge on it, and the studs are just tearing the hell out of the roads. I'm not going to pay more taxes to somebody who's going to fix something that they think's underlayment or something like that. I'm not going to pay more taxes for a cold when what I really have is a broken back. Does that make sense? And they didn't even have that straight. So that's kind of one of my pet peeves. And then bringing down the cost of living. I think there's always efficiency that can be gained in government.
Right.
Sally, you made no bones about it. You want to be mayor, and you would like to be mayor of the city of Bend. And my question is, do you think it's time for the city of Bend to elect a mayor at large rather than choose one from inside the city council?
You know, I honestly think there are pros and cons to both systems. And I think when you have a mayor, you have somebody who's recognized by the entire population by a majority vote, who has the responsibilities and hopefully has the skill sets and the understanding to run a city. When you elect a mayor, you don't necessarily have someone, you have someone who's aspirational, who may or may not represent a narrow or a broader constituency. You have the risk of a mayor that doesn't have background in the city and comes from a narrow constituency who ran a really good campaign. But the pros are you bring somebody in who has who is a figurehead and who really does work and leads the city, and so that's a really strong pro. I think one of the questions is, and it's messy when you have when you elect a council and then they self-elect their leader. There are huge pros and cons in both models. I don't know what the answer is, and I'm really interested in the community conversations that Bend 2030 and other community organizations and groups will be holding, because I think we just scratched the surface in this conversation, and I really want to know what the community is thinking.
So you haven't made up your mind?
Well, I would love to be mayor, and I think right now, of course, I have the background. I was on planning commission for 8 years. I've served in city council for 4 years. I've worked for developers. I've worked for the recreation community. I've worked for culture and the arts. I think I've been here for a long time, and I have children who have gone through the school system.
But as far as being elected at large or within the city council?
No, I have not. Pardon me. Yeah.
You have not
Made up her mind.
I'm not elected or self-elected.
Oh.
I really see pros and cons for both sides. Yeah.
I pretty much agree with Sally on that. I've had some of my, I call them customers, constituents, when I was going around getting my signatures, and a couple of them were really on top of that, about wanting to be able to elect a mayor, but in our present way that the charter's written, the mayor doesn't have any specific powers over us, so what difference would it make? But whatever direction we take, I'm going to take a direction where the people get a say in it. I think that's important, get more of a say in it. Now they get a say in it in that they're electing their city councilors. The city councilors electing the mayor. But if we get a little bit better democracy out of electing the mayor, people feel more comfortable about that. But again, like Sally was saying, we'd have to look at the whole city charter and give the mayor more power to be able to do something over it if we're going to be voting on them specifically, I guess.
You know, I think the assumption is if you elect a mayor, you're going to get somebody who's a better leader. But as I look at sort of the pros and cons on both sides, I really see with either system, you may or may not get the great leader that our city really wants and needs in that particular. So therein lies the fallacy, right, in this debate, right? How you do
I think
this.
it's going to be a less appealing position once people are pointing their finger at the mayor, and there's more accountability to it, and that's the difficult part. Is the mayor then becomes accountable for those city actions, and people feel more
Well, then, and where's the
That they can go right to
representation?
that person.
Where's the representation really for, and what's the role of the rest of those counselors? Right now, we're somewhat equal,
Yeah.
and so we work equally, and we work equally throughout the city. If you have one person that everybody's pointed to, then are you really going to have strong counselors that represent the rest of the community and are heard, and their voices that they reach out to then are heard in the decision making and the
Well,
council or not?
maybe
So,
we could segue into
Yeah.
a question on pay, because that's another one. And I realized when we were doing the debate that it's very difficult for campaigning counselors to talk about whether they are going to get a pay increase or not. But I would like to know whether you feel that a paid counselor is going to be more invested than a volunteer counselor. Wade, why don't you feel balanced? So we have Sally first last time.
That's a tough one, because I think in business, a lot of times you get what you pay for, but then you could have a pretty wealthy person that, you know, just wants to give to the city. And then on the other end of it, you know, there's another city budget expense is paying
Right.
for the counselors. So that's a tough one, but maybe, you know, I haven't been a city councilor yet, so I don't know how much time and energy it's going to take. So that's a tough question for me to ask. You know?
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think that the city, do you think residents would be willing to pay for a paid council? Because while we put it on the councilors to say whether they want the pay, do you think citizens in the community are ready to pay for a higher caliber of counselor?
Wow, I would have to probably say no in that respect, and just that, you know, we're tired of paying more taxes.
Yeah. Sally?
yeah, it's sort of, this is a no-win question, you know, honestly. Nobody wants to pay more money for something that they don't know what they're going to get and, you know, what the outcome is. That's just the reality. And so when you look at this conversation, it's, you know, that's sort of the core problem. So if we paid more money, would we really get the quality of leadership that the community would want? And there are no guarantees in this game. You know, there's no guarantees in politics. If you're, you know, who's actually going to run, number one, and then who's going to get elected, right?
Sure.
We watch that every day. So what I do know is that I think with the increased expectations of counselors, so I spend between 15 and 60 hours a week. So that's a lot of time for someone. It's technically very demanding. I spend, you know, so much time studying and reading and trying to understand, and then working and responding to constituents. And I don't have the time right now, even with that workload, to get back to the constituents. Matter of fact, I have a whole lot of emails that I really need to sit down for a full day and just go through them all.
Right.
And so what do you want as a community? I agree, you know, you get what you pay for sometimes, but not all the time. And so if you look at, for instance, what happened in Vancouver, Washington, I actually ran into a fellow at an event who was very close to what went down in Vancouver, Washington, which is the council did what I think I would probably recommend is they pulled together a community group. The community group made a decision. It went back to council, and then the whole rest of the community went AWOL, and they decided no more money for these. So I guess there are lots of fine points to that story, but essentially that's what happened. I think if you shrank the size of the council and you had sort of partially districts or whatever and partially at large, then you could go back to this conversation of whether or not you wanted to actually compensate those positions. I will say as a counselor, one of the things that really amazes me is there's an awful lot of being an elected official these days is not exactly a cakewalk. You get a lot of barbs, you get a lot of criticism, and there's a lot of transparency every day. People know everything you're about. And so there's this other piece is how do you make it really worthwhile to invest that time, give up a lot of revenue that you'd otherwise be investing in, or in time that you're investing in your business or your family. And you know, how do you really incentivize someone to really invest in our city? That's the question.
Yeah, you pay them. I think the answer to that. Okay.
We got the best
let's
Congress money can buy, right?
I mean, you do have a model at the county level for it.
Yes, you do.
And, so
Yeah.
it's not totally foreign. Nicole,
I don't know. I think how much time are we doing on
I
time?
think we got about 10 more minutes.
Okay.
Bruce, do you have anything?
Yeah, Wade, you made no bones about it the other night either on Measure 97. You said it was absurd. I believe.
Oops, maybe I was kind of strong.
And Sally, you said you didn't make up your mind yet, but you're going to have to make up your mind to cast a vote. It's time to be a
I
public
do.
official and say which way you're going to go on.
Yes, I do. I understand that. I'm gonna have to make up my mind. I'm gonna have to do my research. But let me tell you, and this is like the life of a counselor. So I have debates. I have major issues in front of city council. I have children that I'm sending off to college. I have other private issues that I can't talk about here today. I have business contracts that I haven't completed. I mean, and I'm running a campaign. I mean, my schedule is full, and my commitment to my community and to me as an individual is I don't want to make decisions until I understand all sides of it. And so for me as an individual, this for me is a state-led issue. As an individual, I need to do my work, and as a community leader, I know the community is counting on me to do my homework. But honestly, my community needs me first to make a decision on the UGB. I need to first invest my time and my energy on making really strong policy around this climate action resolution and make sure it works for our community. Then I can go to the less important, they're all important, right, in different levels. But for me, is my work as city councilor and what I have on my plate, that did not rise to the top right away. I understand it's really important for our state and will be for families in our community. I just haven't gone there yet, and that's why.
Wade, how are we going to vote on it?
How am I going to vote? I think I'm going to vote against it. We just don't need more taxes. Again, we got to look and see how we're running our business. I always look at, I've dealt with budgets all my life. I made money when supposedly there wasn't opportunities in this town. And if you're a good businessman, you'll dig down, you'll find out what's costing you money. And sometimes you need to spend a little money to make it. So I just don't think 97, I told people I'm all about the fair tax. That's more of the tax. We need to change the way we're doing taxes. So I'm not voting in more taxes unless it's something specific that, never say never. But unless it's something that is really needed and can show a logical reason for it, then I'm for it. But I'm not voting for more taxes every time government says, oh, we didn't make it our budget. We need more in our budget.
Did that include the gas revenue tax that we had for potholes?
That includes the gas revenue tax that we had for potholes. Now here's the thing that I will say that I may be different than Chudowski on it. As a tax, yes, I would maybe agree with Sally on it being a good user fee tax. But my point with that tax was we weren't keeping up with our roads in the first place and finding out what's wearing out our roads and researching it enough to go and ask for that tax again and then say, since we're taxing you here, we're going to let you go there. But it's just more and more and more taxes, and no, I'm not for that. So that's why I voted down the tax. That's why I think it went down in a flaming...
So there is a point of difference here between you two on that.
That might be a point of difference, yeah. I'm going to logically look down and figure out, and we're going to boil it down on the streets, on what's wearing the streets out, and then we're going to address that problem. We're not just going to go ask for more taxes.
So, counselors have been looking at this since 2009. They looked at it, and it's always been about not raising more taxes. But as the expenses to fix our streets have increased and the revenues haven't increased at that pace, what do you do in that moment? And so when you have old county roads where you don't even have the right-of-way where the road is going, and that was an issue and on Reed Market, and where you have to have another east-west corridor, you've got to make your investments. But we didn't do it with the existing revenues, right? We went out to the voters with a bond because that was a new road. Our tax rate is frozen. We have limited revenues. And so what did we do to create and to repair and maintain all the streets? We lowered our reserves That's a one-time action. We sold a piece of property, the Bulletin property. That's a one-time action. We're not going to get those reserves back in the next downturn. We're not going to be able to sell another piece of property, to get that, how many, a little over $1 million back in our bucket. So we still don't have our, we have maybe out of a overall little over 6 million, right, to increase by 1 payment condition index point per year to get back to the level where we don't have to invest as much to maintain our streets. We have a big gap right now. And so with our frozen tax rate in Bend and our economic swings and cycles, we're just looking at one-time revenues and a little we're trying to put the $500,000, hopefully, if the marijuana tax is passed, by going actually to the state and shifting how the transit room tax is written. We can get another $500,000 per year,
So let me.
but that's not enough.
Wade, did you want to respond?
Yeah, can I please?
Sure.
This is exactly my point. Reed Market Road did not provide any more lanes or functionality to it. It is concrete overkill. It looks like LA. It is not environmentally sound. It is an over expenditure and a joke. Same thing, we're selling the Bulletin property at a loss. I'm going to stick to what the one bone that the Bend Bulletin threw at me 4 years ago in 2012 is Wade Fagen will skewer the nonsense. The Juniper Ridge was bought for OSU to be out there. When we originally did COCC, it almost seemed like it was out of town. Hell, Mountain View seemed like it was out of town when we put that out of there. What I want to do is by accommodating your customer, she was talking about the fluxes that we have here. Tourism, unfortunately, has a huger flux than what logging used to have. We never had people killing themselves when the market went south like we did in the last one. But if we keep going along steadily, then that's how you get rid of the influxes. People sometimes make more out of problems than they really need to be. When you've been in business for 20 years and you've never gone bankrupt, with the statistic that 90% of people go bankrupt in 5 years, and of that 10% left, 90% of those go bankrupt in another 10 years, I'm very proud of myself that I've ran the same business, never gone bankrupt for the past 30 years in Bend. And I can see not having that influx. There was one other point.
Were you on council in 2008?
No.
I wasn't either. So we had the choice to continue to pay fairly significant hundreds of thousands of dollars every year on debt, right, on the loan for the Bulletin land, or as the market rebounded, we had the opportunity to actually sell it, and who knows when the market will peak, right, but we knew it wasn't in the bottom anymore, and we have a developer and a purchaser in place, and we'll actually be able to put that property on the tax rolls and generate revenue that will come into the general fund. So that was the basis that we put that property on. I mean, I didn't make the decision to purchase it, but I had to control really what I saw as the bleeding in the general fund and a way to stabilize that and bring money back into the general fund in a different way. So that was the decision I made. And we had some cash, and what did we do with it? We put it into the roads, because that's where we were losing $2 million a year by doing nothing. And every year I sat on council, I'd say, we've got to do something more. And the council went, no, there are other priorities. We've got police, we have fire, we have water, we have sewer. And so finally, here we are with the roads.
When I run my business, the last thing I do is try to sell assets to make my expenses. You either bring down your expenses, or you go out there and you make more customers and you make happy people come to your business. It's just the same thing with Troy Field. I'm sick that they want to try to sell Troy Field at a profit for the school district. No, school district, run it like a business. We don't want to be selling our beautiful assets. We don't want to keep tearing down Pilot Butte Inn. That's what I feel like Ben's doing. I remember when that happened in '74, and there's not a continuation of that. I don't want to lose assets. We got to straighten up and run it like a business.
Well, so our time is running short, unfortunately. I'd like, if I could, just anything that we might have missed, or any conclusion statements you'd like to make? Give me about 2.5 minutes. Wade, you were talking last, so Sally, why don't you start?
I think Bend has a great future in front of it. I think this town is built on great bones. I think it has good people. I think it's got a good culture. And I think we can build to grow it in a really healthy, grounded, all-inclusive way. We've got to put more, and I have a lot of ideas that we'll share another time, but I think we've got to do a better job of creating and maintaining living wage jobs for the people to live and work here. And that, to a certain extent, is going to help us having people in town who can afford to actually live here and will help us with the affordable housing. So the other piece of that is we've got to do a more, even accelerate and do a more aggressive job in creating affordable housing. Again, housing that people who live here or who work here can live here. That's really important. A lot of that structure and those bones are in place. Now we've really got to begin to build. And I think all those pieces are in place. One of the things that's really challenging in government, and honestly the city of government, as nimble as it is compared to other structures, and certainly the city is more nimble than the state or the feds, but we're constrained, we're a government. We make a policy here, then people come to our planning desk, then they pull the building permit, finally people move in. You have time frames. So the policy decisions we make today you won't see for a little while, but I gotta say I'm really proud of the changes that we are queuing up right now. And Bend is turning in a really good, healthy financial direction. And I think for cultural and livability as well. We've got a cool town, it's got a great soul, it's got good people, we still wave at each other, we can still laugh and smile, and we've got to be able to work harder on living and working here.
Wade?
Bring more diversity to Bend City Council, vote for Wade Fagen. If you don't know him, go ask somebody that does. I've got a lot of good friends around town, and I think it's going to be that word of mouth, return customers kind of thing. You get to know me inside, and I think I'll win this election.
Great. You had some questions we didn't get to.
Well, we wanted to do a little fun piece of just like throwing out a couple fun things. So the first one is, who should I pick for this first one? Do you know what it is?
Oh, I think pick Wade. Yeah.
Okay,
pick
Wade.
Wade.
Wade, you
Make
get
him
to,
put
you
him on the
get to
hot seat, then he can
interview.
react.
You get to interview Donald Trump. What would you ask him?
Oh, Donald, why are you acting like such a lunatic? Why?
I'm not a lunatic. I'm a good businessman. I've run my business as well. Okay.
I know, and that's what I don't understand. You run a good business, kind of on the same pretense that I'm running my campaign. And your business is real estate. And I would think in the real estate business that for you to make money, people got to like you to negotiate with you. Why are you doing these sort of things? And the only answer I can think of is he's just trying to keep his name out there, because I've heard in politics, name recognition, and he's getting it out there to just piss off the people and bring up some more voters.
Sally?
Donald, how come you're not reading your teleprompter? What happened to that promise? No, I mean, how come you keep changing your policies? How do we know what we can trust or what we can't trust? It's like, what happened to your team? You keep changing up your team because it's not working for you. What happened to those Russians that were, that you'd hired that were running your campaign, and now they're out and somebody else is in? I mean, how can we? And what about all those bankruptcies? I mean, you are obviously not a good money manager, and you are like writing your campaign on the backs of people, and you're paying them 20 cents on the dollars in bankruptcy. Is that a good business practice? And is that a practice that we want to apply to the United States of America? Not so sure.
All right, Sally, Hillary, what do you ask her?
Hillary, when are you going to relax and be yourself? I mean, honestly, this girl has the chops, she's got the background, she's got the smarts, she really has the heart. What she really can't do is drop into, I saw her on Saturday Night Live. Oh my God, she's funny as hell, she's, personable, but somehow the challenge, I think, of being a woman on the campaign trail in a country that's never had a woman as president it's a tough climb, and I don't know.
Yeah. It's a good one.
Yeah.
Wade, what would you ask her?
What
She's
I
in the
ask
hot
Hillary?
seat. Yeah, she's in the hot seat. You're interviewing. What do you ask her?
God, I couldn't ask her any questions. She's a politician, and I'm.
But you want to be a politician. You need to know how to do this.
Maybe I would ask her. That might be a good question that I ask her. How can I be a better politician? Because I'm not. No, I believe in our Constitution that we all come in and do our time and hopefully contribute and then pull out. This career politician stuff has got to go. And so I guess I'm sorry. I don't have any questions for her.
Fair enough.
Okay, you live on the east side. Where's your favorite place to hang for a football game?
Hang for
A football game.
to go watch a football game?
Yeah.
Well, I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. My son's name is Dallas. I go down to Summit Saloon.
Yeah.
So we're not.
But that's
We
on the
don't
west
have
side.
any.
We're on the east side.
Huh?
We're on the east side.
On the east side, but I don't watch TV. I've got my own TV. They don't have. That's my point. They don't have any cool places.
So
on
change
the
it.
east side.
Wait, so
That's what I said. We're gonna bring some love to the east side, like one of my customers.
So-
Doesn't Worthy have a bar?
Yes.
Don't they have a TV in their bar?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I
Where?
don't know. I go to different places all the time. I just pop in wherever I have somebody. Go, let's go watch the game. It's like, okay, where are we going today?
Worthy.
I go all
If you ever
places. Yeah.
think I'm outspoken, you should see me in the front of a Dallas Cowboy football game. It's better than I'm not out in public.
We
They
might
always
tag
have to
along
have
with the
like
camera
edible